multi-ethnic setting. So why talk about bilingualism or polylingualism and its mechanisms? Of course, because we all live in multinational states, so we coexist on one territory. International contacts are developing. Globalization process is undergoing. So all of this resulted in introduction of different types of bilingualism. So if we speak of Russian scientists, we just decided to present to you the types of bilingualism introduced by Evgeny Mikhailovich Vereshchagin. So he sees it like this, as follows. The criteria to be taken under consideration are as follows. So, which is the age of acquisition, which can be early and late, then performance based on the ability. So the bilingualism can be perceptional when we are talking about speaking abilities, reproducing, and reproduction. Then, depending on interrelation of speech mechanisms, it can be pure, mixed, natural, and artificial. Depending on communication resources, we can talk about contact and non-contact types of bilingualism. Then, depending on communicative activity, active and passive, and speech producing and way of thinking, spontaneous, which is also can be called as direct and mediated or indirect. So if we speak of bilingualism by international scientists, well, we can just give the definition taken from Cambridge Dictionary, which is bilingualism is the fact of being able to use two languages equally well. And if we just look through some researches by international scientists, we can also come across such word combination as code switch, which is to change between two or more languages or dialects or accents. And if we just compile all the knowledge they just give to us, we can just also present such types of bilingualism according to ways of acquisition, which is simultaneous acquisition. So we can just encounter compound bilingual. For example, when a child learns several languages simultaneously within its social environment, successive acquisition, and here we have coordinate bilingual or subordinate bilingual. So coordinate when the two languages are equally used or important, and subordinate bilingual when one language, usually the mother or native tongue, dominates the daily life. Natural acquisition, when a language is learned without formal instruction. Guided acquisition, when the knowledge of a language is acquired by means of instructions, for example, learning at school. Then also we can name such as symmetric acquisition, when several languages are equally mastered with similar proficiency, and asymmetric acquisition, when one language dominates the other. So, so how does it work? Well, I think that before just answering this question, we should think or ask ourselves whether bilingualism is equal to biculturalism. And as we know, acquiring a language does not guarantee successful communication, as it was noted by Evgeny Fedorovich Tarasov. Hence, cultural code should be of great importance. So, our understanding of bilingualism is that bilingualism is the capability of a person to operate the science of two or more languages and cultures at the same level. And remembering the statement of our distinguished Natalia UFIMTSEVA and Irina Yurievna Markovina, which they gave us in the first part of our symposium, that language is another semiotic form of consciousness existence, we can state that the parallel coexistence and functioning of both languages in the language or verbal consciousness of a bilingual contributes to the unity of the consciousness and the language, which provides direct access of the second language to the pre-speech level, which according to some scholars is common to all languages. And this interpenetration, so to say, allows, for example, the authors bilinguistic or polylinguistic consciousness to translate and openly demonstrate the emotiveness and emotionality of his native language in the text written in the second language, through the use of signs that do not just represent the objects of the world around us, but convey a person's subjective attitude to a particular object or phenomenon. So we can, well, it can be asserted that each language contains the code of thinking of mankind as a whole, which allows the statement or thought to be formed in this universal code. But the further fulfillment of thought occurs in the individual subject code of a person, which is created on the basis of native language. The situation of functioning of two or more languages in the mind of the bi or polylingual author in the process of generating a text can serve as an example of such cultural integration, interaction, or mutual influence of languages. So we analyzed the text of two bilingual writers. Here you can see their names. Timbot Kirashov, who, an Adiga writer, who lived in the USSR in Adygea, and the languages he possessed were Adiga. He was speaking and writing in this language, and Russian, also speaking and writing. And he has books in both languages. So, and Kadir Natho, so he's based in the United States of America, and the languages he worked on were Adiga. But he was speaking only Adiga language, actually, and English, speaking and writing. He knew some Russian because first 15 years he spent in the USSR as well, and then left for abroad. So by means of continuous sampling method, we chose small texts and or abstracts, so to say, from the text of two mentioned writers, which contained ethnically marked units in the text, which can be defined as ethnic lexical units or linguocultural or mental units. So, and we took, the lexical level and syntactical levels. So, if we look at the examples, so here you can see examples from Timbot Kirashov's books. So he wrote the book in Russian, but the words in italics are written in Russian language, but actually they are, they have a dignotion or something like that. So in the first, for example, you can see a phonetical imitation of Adiga exclamation. In the two next ones, you can see transliterated Adiga words in Russian. So, and the following two contain cultural units, because, for example, I tried to translate them into English, although they just, of course, written in Russian. But for your understanding, so the first one contains salt and maize porridge, which is traditional dish of Adiga people. And the next example, for example, let God send you to a place where you will not see any human being. So this is an Adiga saying translated into Russian. The next example also shows the cultural specificity. He hasn't been in Temergoi for more than 2 years, not because he turned his heart away from it or gave it up. So again, I tried to translate this piece, turned his heart away from it, but it's an Adiga set expression, you see. So, and the interesting thing that he doesn't try even to probably not to not to explain or to translate, right? It just takes these expressions or word combinations from his head, or they come out just like this. So the same with Kadir Nadho's books, which were also analyzed, and the analysis shows that there are a lot of such units, cultural units. So here you also can see, well, his books are in English, but they also contain some Adiga words, exclamations, like for example in first 3 examples, way, which is very known, by the way, among the diaspora of Adig people in the United States, March, then he just transliterates again the Adig word qibla, sorry. Then some also set word combinations as, for example, God willing, honey water, hazelnut flag, which are also cultural units or items of Adig cuisine and Adig ceremony of wedding. And the last 2 ones are just phraseological units. The more one lives, the more one experiences. And which corresponds to Russian чем больше живешь, тем больше узнаешь. Probably it can be just equalized to English live and learn, but it doesn't give full understanding, I would say. If he gave it like this, well, I guess Adig people who live in the United States and read these books wouldn't understand that. If you meet a fool, put your hat on his head and walk away. Again, this is a phraseological unit of Adig people. Встретишь дурака, дай шапку и пройди мимо. Or, well, probably it can correspond to English when the dogs bark, the camels just keep walking, but it doesn't give, as you see, the notion of any head or just head, right, on one's head. So, as we see it, when a person who knows, who is a bilingual or polylingual reads the text, well, first, how he defines the sign. So first, the perception comes of a sign, then the understanding of the sign, and defining it as a foreign, strange, or unfamiliar, or vice versa, familiar and very well known, coming from your own culture. So we can say that bilingualism guarantees a conflict-free way of coexistence in multi-ethnic settings, because bilingualism as a way of conflict-free coexistence of peoples on multilingual territories successfully fulfills its function only if the bilingual person can be proficient in both languages and fluently speaks its native language and the second one at the same level. Living with 2 languages can be considered not only a challenge, but also an opportunity and a benefit, of course. The results of our study of the literary text of Adiga writers creating their works in English and Russian show that the author's consciousness share units of speech in two languages, the interaction of which creates a special text, a special language situation where units of one language seem accompany units of the other. Which is also should be noted is that, as a bilingual, I can say that, when you read the text, you clearly see what is yours or what is just foreign for you. So this is the first step, actually, but and the second step would be, for example, analysis or composing a questionnaire, and where we can ask people to confirm our suggestions. I don't know whether, survey. Actually, I did some survey, but I can't say that it's a full-scale survey. That's why probably I shouldn't just present you the results of it. But, I asked people to read the extracts and defined them like English or not English. Well, when I give, of course, English just text. And give some comments or briefly explain their choice and their understanding. So, and these comments were received, like, for example, this is a lone translation from a Adiga language, or this is very similar to an Adiga saying, this is an object of Adiga culture, so it doesn't look like English. So such results were received. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bella. Thank you very much. Are there any questions? I'm sure that there must be questions because the topic is really very interesting. Comments, perhaps? Okay. So we're still digesting the material we were presented with. All right. So I think at the end of the meeting, you will be able to take the floor and give your comments or ask questions because we are all here. Thank you, Bella, once again.
Thank you.
Now we move on. And now I give the floor to Viktoriya ZAVYALOVA. Very happy to have you here. And the presentation will be on processing non-native accents in English-mediated communication contexts. Viktoriya, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Irina Yurievna. And I would like to express my gratitude to Natalia Vladimirovna and the organizers of this great symposium for inviting me to join you. And so I'll try to share my screen in a second. So is anything happening? I hope.
Not yet. Yes. Yes, it is about to appear. Yeah.
Okay, so that's not the first slide. So
you can make it full screen, please.
Yes, I will in a second. Okay, so thank you very much. And as you introduced my topic, it's on processing non-native accents in English-mediated communication contexts. And actually, I represent the School of Phonetics and Linguistics of the Far Eastern Federal University, which is far away from Portugal and Brazil and Moscow, and it's in the far east of Russia, in the city of Vladivostok. So you understand that my interest is in our region mostly. So what I'm going to talk about mainly today. So I would like to touch upon phonetic organization of the language in the wide sense of, in the broad sense of the word phonetic, meaning phonological as well. So, and I see it as a cognitive faculty. Then I would like to bring up some data from studies in non-native language acquisition and neurolinguistics with regards to the phenomenon of phonetic interference. Next, I'll try to touch upon slightly and briefly on non-native accents as a source of social cultural information, but our major interest, of course, is on non-native accents as a perception challenge. And so I will finish up with the theory, with the model of working memory by Alan Baddeley. And the theory deals with the phonological loop as a part of working memory, which might help us in processing non-native accents. Before going into that deep, I would like to mention that English has definitely become an international language in Asia as well, so in the Asian context. Yes, and so there is data from the work by Kirkpatrick, Andy Kirkpatrick, that reads that the number of users of English in the expanded circle countries of Asia equals the total number of native speakers of English. So you can understand why I'm interested in the topic. And actually, it's interesting to know that English is used as a sole official language for such a regional organization as Association of Southeast Asian Nations, comprising 10 states, to which to know of which English is a native language, or like a national language or an official language. So that was the English-mediated context in Asia Pacific. The same is true about the situation in the Russian Far East, so where it's used as the language of international conferences that are conducted annually. And there's very many conferences, so you can just easily find them. The one that is gaining like popularity, it's an Eastern Economic Forum, which invites guests from Pacific Rim, and they all prefer English as the language of their presentations for those forums. Besides, English is a medium of instruction for university international programs, and that's the case with the university I represent. And you can see that the major proportion of students comes from China, Korea, Japan. Although recently we have just a flood of students from India as well, and this accent really needs more attention, as I understand. But today I'll be talking about those East Asian accents that I am dealing with for more than 20 years already. Now I'm ready to give you some hints about the about my and other researchers' understanding of phonetic organization of the language as a cognition faculty. And I can tell you that many people have touched upon that, sometimes like focusing it particularly in the article, sometimes just touching upon that with remarks. And one of the key textbooks and monographs, I would say, texts that I enjoy is the one by Iris Parent, The Phonological Mind, and I will get back to that book one more time. So, according to researchers, we should not disregard phonology, talking about like cognitive processes. Therefore, we understand that each linguistic sign or expression has its semantic representation with the help of phonological tools of the language. One more thing, it's not just theoretical. Today, we can rely on data from neurolinguistics and neuroimaging data, which proves that a categorization of phonological features, whichever they might be, phonemes, syllables, etc. So, actually, I should have started with features, because even the feature of like voicing and devoicing is represented in our brain in a particular zone. And so the neuroimaging data can prove that, and I will get back to that a little bit later on. And I would like to remind the audience that neurolinguistics started in Russia with that publication by Alexander Romanovich Luria, Basic Problems of Neurolinguistics. And then lots of other followers, like disciples of Luria, continued his work, and you could see the names of many of them on the previous slide, one of the previous slides. And I can tell you that the number of laboratories of neurolinguistics is growing in Russia, and just I brought a few. And the one is Laboratory for Cognitive Studies at St. Petersburg. It's State University there, which is headed by Professor Chernigovskaya. And actually, it's not surprising that she is the head of that research, because she majored in phonetics with the Department of Phonetics and methods of teaching foreign languages at the same university, at Sherba's school. I hope that many of you know the name of Lev Vladimirovich Sherba, who is like the father of phonetics in Russia. One of the fathers, I would say. So moving on. And now, so I will just briefly run through the anatomic framework for our language, which actually was described as early as in the 19th century, and now we all know about those areas that are somehow associated with our speech production and speech perception. So Broca and Wernicke's zones, which are connected via particular neuron pathways, and modern research shows that those pathways are dual. So most probably the ventral stream and the dorsal stream, and that's how we process information. And actually, Broca's area is also responsible for physiology of the language. We should understand that. Therefore, maybe it is important to think of this zone, meaning like trying to understand the process of second language phonological categorization and its neural imaging, in the brain. So we can also draw some data from the research in non-native language acquisition with regards to phonetic interference. We understand that there are several concepts there, and one of them is a perceptual assimilation model. So it's quite normal for us to acquire second language units, trying to adjust them or assimilate them with the ones that we already have. And in Russian phonology, it's more known, it's wider known as phonological strainer theory by Nikolai Trubetskoy. But like we see that many other researchers come to the same idea. And what is curious to know is that there exist two ways of adjusting to the new phonological system when learning it. So we process the new ones differently from those that have kind of analogies in our L1 system. And therefore, sometimes you can hear that phonetic interference is mostly caused by differences between the languages, but sometimes similarities just do more for that. And we understand that this kind of equivalence classification so can hinder the establishment of new phonetic or phonological categories. So moving on. In the book that I've already mentioned by Iris Parent, we find several indications of what magnetic resonance imaging can tell us. So this thick evidence in the brain that we have observable brain responses reflecting sensitivity to phonetic contrasts, which help us to differentiate just allophonic variation of the language, allophonic variation. So like pa with more or less aspiration, for example. We see clear responses to phonological contrasts differentiated different phonemes, like pa and ba. But in this case, we also should mention imaging mapping of those phonological features like voicing, devoicing. We see proof for vowel consonant contrasts in the brain. We also see unmarked versus marked syllable contrasts in the brain, and actually unmarked types of syllable is CVC type versus the more complicated structure with clusters of consonants is seen as a marked type of a syllable. The same story with the stress patterns. So two-syllable word stressed on the first syllable is considered to be unmarked versus like the opposite is a marked stress pattern. So what else do we learn from neurolinguistics and second language acquisition research? One more thing is our neuroplasticity. So neuroplasticity, it's one of the learning tools for language acquisition, as it refers to changes in the neural circuitry associated with the formation of the new habits. And that's good about neuroplasticity, but the bad news about that is that it begins to decline in puberty, and it actually gives proof for critical period hypothesis. And so what else what do we see in the functional MRI scans? Actually, we can find proof for speaker of Japanese, English speaker of Japanese speaker of English. We can find proof for non-differentiation of English R and O sounds in such minimal pairs as right and light, race and lace, and there are 1,000 more pairs like this. And so actually, as R or as a single phoneme in Japanese, it has just single region in the brain of a Japanese speaker, which is activated as they hear it and as they speak it. Whereas for the English speaker, it's two different areas of activation that show up with each zone for unique sound. So what do we do? How do we learn the new phonological units? How do we acquire them?
Viktoriya, I'm sorry, do you think some 3 minutes will be enough for you to finish?
Okay, so thanks for reminding. I can talk longer, of course, but we understand that some rewiring of elements in the brain circuitry is needed, which will result in firing new brain zones. And actually, so I should mention that the new method that is widely used now is the Tomatis method, so you can just read more on that, which exaggerates, modifies, extends the acoustic features of the sounds of the second language. Probably I'll skip information on social identity as one of the aspects related to non-native accents. You can understand it intuitively. And so why non-native accents pose a perception challenge? With the example of East Asian Englishes, it's in the specificity of phonetic variation. So, and actually we conducted a huge project on this accent description compared to other projects like ACE, voice, etc. So, and the key findings here is that the typologically and genetically distant languages such as Chinese, Korean, or Japanese, they show problematic interference with regards to syllable pattern transfer. Thus, it may be difficult for interpreters, especially simultaneous interpreters, to comprehend. And according to a survey done by International Society of Conference Interpreters, about 60% of respondents claim that stress, foreign accented speech, accounts for the majority of stress that they experience. So, well, that's a slide about the database that we collected. And finally, I would finish up with good news that we can cope with this phonological variation thanks to the phonological loop, which can help us in processing non-native accents. And the model was developed by Ellen Baddeley, and you see the phonological loop here. So here it is. So it has two sub-components. It's articulatory loop and acoustic store. And so we understand that it allows us to hold the accented form for about 1 to 2 seconds in that acoustic store first, and we can repeat this like sequence of sounds using this articulatory loop. And I can assure you that the new findings in neurolinguistics prove the existence of those areas in the brain, in Broca's and Wernicke zones. And So, taking into consideration these cognitive, neurological, psychological processes underlying speech acquisition, production, and perception, we come to understand that the crucial thing is to expose ourselves to multiple and varied non-native accents, to learn from exposure, to use our phonological loop as a tool to do that. And so just the conclusions. So most salient transformations in East Asian English speech are triggered in the syllabic rhythmic organization of the word or phrase. Perceptual adjustment to non-native accents is possible most probably due to phonological loop development and planned perceptual training or exposure to foreign accented speech improves perception of speech with the same or similar accent. So I wish you all to have this wide exposure to different accents, and you'll communicate more successfully. Thank you for your attention, and I'll be ready to answer some questions if any arise.
Thank you so much, Viktoriya. We will try. We will try.
I'll try to stop demonstration.
Yes. I mean to follow your advice. Thank you, Professor Claire Cabral. Thank you very much. Thanks. Anything to say? Anything to comment on or question?
I have something to comment to your excellent paper.
Thank you so much.
At the end of the session.
Thank you very much.
Right, thank you. Now, questions, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues? Anything to ask? Anything to comment on?
And actually, you can you're welcome to write.
I thought that you should make the comments at the end of the session. Can we make now?
Yes, yes.
Well, excellent paper, Viktoriya. It's quite interesting because those experiments on newborn show that the baby is born with the innate ability to distinguish any categorical phonetic difference that can be used by any language. But as soon as he or she learns his or her native language, there is a decay of this ability in favor of the differences that are useful to their language to distinguish meaning. And so this is so complex that the memory must be cleaned. And so the initial ability is blocked. So to learn a second or third language, the most difficult thing is to recognize the difference that do not exist in there. For instance, I can tell you an anecdote. For instance, in English, you know that the difference of length in vowels, for instance, E, there is the more length vowel in contrast with the shorter E. So this is quite difficult. For instance, this is shit. But what is if you don't make the difference?
Good example.
If you go to the sea, you can say something very nice, but you can say also an awful word. You understand?
Sometimes it helps.
I think that you mentioned that English is quite important now, and I think that the most difficult problem is this one, because Asian languages do not distinguish the difference between length in the vowels, in those vowels. How can we? You spoke about how can we manage with this in the teaching learning setting? Well, first of all, you cannot teach them by hearing, because they don't distinguish the difference. You understand? They don't distinguish the difference. When a native speaker, English native speaker speaks, they will not distinguish. Well, I suggest something, because here in the process of learning, teaching learning is a conscious one. So attention is fundamental. So you must guide the attention towards this that unconsciously people would not distinguish. Correct? And I think that another possibility is using written material, because in the written material the words are distinguished, you see, because the orthography shows the difference between those words. This may be one auxiliary, but you must be confident on your purpose, because neuroscience discovered that the language neurons are open to learning new things. The process is called recycling neurons. You can recycle the neurons. The specialists that work create this word, recycling neurons, was Stanislas Dehaene. D-E-H-A-E-N-E. And so I think that this is the theoretical chance we have to teach your Asian students those differences that do not exist in their respective language. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Leonor. Thank you so much. Any more comments?
Yes, please.
Thank you so much.
Yes, please.
The floor is
So I guess you authorized me to speak. I'm not sure that writing is always the best solution to differentiate words that are very close. Think of the sentence, the boring machine, boring all day long, is boring to me. It's the same word, it's the same spelling, but it's quite different in meaning. I don't hear you, Miss Leonor.
Sorry, are those two words homographs?
What do you mean?
They are written. They are written the same way.
They're written exactly the same way. They all
so
come
they
anyway.
when the words are homographs,
Yeah.
there is no way of, but written tests are only auxiliary. They are not fundamental
There are
only
ways.
an auxiliary.
There are ways to distinguish them. The boring machine, boring all day long, is boring to me. You could have the intonation that comes into it. It's exactly the same root anyway. It's the verb to bore. To bore meaning drilling holes. So the first two are drilling holes, and the last one is a derived meaning, which is where is drilling holes in my hand or in my head or somewhere. You say that remembers me. Just differentiate shit and sheet. At times, in some English, American, or other series, it's difficult to understand which is which because they are very close and the actors are not playing on it. They are just speaking colloquial American English or colloquial British English or colloquial Scottish English. And then you have strange situations where the two words where to know which is which. You know, it's the same thing. As for the meaning, when you speak of your female dog, you say she is a bitch. Do you know? Do you mean that she is a bitch, a female dog, or she is a bitch? She's a bore. I mean, she's a pain in the ass, barking all day long. That's also being a bitch to a dog. And I'm not talking of her. I'm not sexist, so it's not a woman, but it can be a woman. You say. And how do you differentiate those words? I mean, those meanings, intonation, context, co-text. We don't differentiate co-text, which is inside the text, and context, which is outside the text. Context can include co-text, but co-text doesn't include context.
Really, Professor Jacques. Really, to understand, we cannot depend only upon the phonetic cues. You must call all we are to meaning for sure, to the syntax, the position, the word occupies. All the knowledge we have about language is playing to understand what people say. We cannot depend only upon the phonetic cues. You are for sure. You are quite right.
May have one
yes,
comment,
sure.
like
one
final comment.
Yes.
So I would just try to like bring two opinions together, because no semantics and no syntax is possible without linear phonetic processing and phonological one. There's no syntax without phonology. Try to think of that. So even getting to your final boring, you come through those phonetic variations. There's no other way, and it's not just phonemes.
Dear Viktoriya,
yeah. And so I know
we cannot forget, and the father of this idea was Saussure, was not only in the 86 year that for sure this linguistic sign is the indissoluble union between
sound and meaning. That's right.
Sound, no, between phonemes. What's the significant et signifié? This was the original definition of saucisse. Significant is signifier. Signifier is meaning. Signifiant may be written written material or oral material, but you see.
Okay.
So this of course, but what we are discussing is that from the point of view, the phenomenological way, the processing, when we are processing what we hear, for understanding, you must we must have the prior knowledge. Yes, prior knowledge. We must go to syntax. We must, if for sure we cannot diminish the role of the significant. We cannot, for sure we depend. But not only. This was what we said, not only. Not that you dismiss. We need, because the significant is the way we get to meaning. We cannot, this is the way we get. But we cannot depend only on this information. It is not enough for understanding. This is what we are discussing here.
Beautiful. Can I say a word about this?
Sure, Marco.
Thank you. Yes, I mean, I believe that the linguistic sign, the both parts are joined together by syntax. So there can be, in the architecture of language, we can have no phonology, for example, in deaf languages, right? Sensory motor expression. And on the other side, you have concepts and intentions. And the connection of these two dimensions is made by syntax. So that's why syntax is the core of language, because it makes it possible, the connection on the two sides of the linguistic sign, which can be pronounced in most languages, but also it can be just like in sign languages, there's no sound at all. So there's the phonology of gestures, there's the prosody. People nowadays talk about face prosody, right? And this is possible because there is a mechanism that puts together these two sides of the linguistic sign, which is syntax. That's a view. I just contribute to the discussion. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Marcos. Thank you so much, Professor Leonor and Professor Jacques as well. So, Viktoriya, congratulations. So we had a very interesting.
Thank you all.
Yes, thank you. Thanks very much. And so let us move on then. And we are now going to hear Professor Liudmila ZAMORSHCHIKOVA with her presentation, Language Situation in a Changing Russian Arctic. The floor is yours, Liudmila.
Thank you very much. My presentation will come from Irina.
Do you mean she will be demonstrating it?
Yes, I try.
Is she present?
Yes. She's about to begin. Yes, she's here.
1 minute. I'm sorry. Yes.
Can you make it full screen?
All dear participants of this session, dear Professor Leonor Cabral, and other moderators, Irina Markovina, Natalia Vladimirovna UFIMTSEVA. I will present my little paper about the Arctic zone and and the language policy and language problem in the Arctic zone of the Russia. The languages and language situation of indigenous people of the North is one of the main indicators of the sustainable development of the Arctic. Today, the minority languages of the Arctic and of the Russian Arctic are in the zone of ethnic disaster. Therefore, the linguistic situation and policy in the context of the sustainability in the Arctic should become a priority of state, scientific, and public activities. Today, a major factor influencing language landscape in the Arctic, in the Russian Arctic, is the migration and urbanization. This is a widespread phenomenon in the Arctic and has led to significant changes in lifestyle and the introduction of cultural tension in the minority settlement. Indigenous people who maintain a traditional lifestyle and are associated with the land show a higher level of language preservation, both in terms of language transfer and preservation of various language domains, such as those associated with traditional knowledge or cultural practice. Modern change in the Arctic social environment directly include migration, urbanization, industrial development of territory, which have an impact, a huge impact on the language and culture. Firstly, on the few indigenous people living in the Arctic. On the dynamic and functioning content of language contact lead to change to the traditional lifestyle, loss of ethnic value, and affect linguistic and ethnic self-identification. Irina? Second slide. According to UNESCO document, the Sakha Republic, one of the big republics, the more big republic of Yakutia, of Russia, the Sakha Republic Yakutia, represent a positive experience of preserving of languages and culture of minority people of the Russian North, the Russian Arctic, developing the positive cultural and linguistic diversity policy. The political change in the post-Soviet Russia affected the national and linguistic processes, which were characterized by the increased interest in the national languages and culture, spread of bilingualism and multilingualism, the desire to revitalize, to document the languages of indigenous minorities people. Under such condition, the legislative regulation of language policy become of great importance. Second, other slide. The next slide. The linguistic policy of Russian Federation. In the post-Soviet area, on the basis of the one law declaration of the languages of the people of Russia, the Parliament of Sakha Republic in 1992 adopted the law on the languages of the Republic of Sakha-Yakutia. This law announced the Yakut and Russian, Yakut it's a Sakha people, Sakha language, announced the Yakut and Sakha, Yakut is Sakha, Yakut and Russian languages as state languages of the Republic, and 5 other languages of small numbered minority peoples, Evenki, Even, Yukagir, Dolgan, and Chukch, are considered as official languages in the Republic. The new constitution of the Russian Federation adopted last year consider the Russian language, the Russian, is the one main language in all territory of the Russian Federation. But according to Article 68, the Republic, the National Republic, can have right to establish in their territory our own state languages. So in Yakutia, in our Republic, Sakha-Yakutia, we have two languages officially recognized: Sakha, Russian, primarily, and Sakha language. Next slide. Next slide. Next. Yes, this year, this summer, we start a new big research project founded by the government of the Russia. The project on started concern the establishing of International Arctic Laboratory of Linguistic Ecology, and led by the professor of Chicago University, Leonore Grenoble. Next slide. So under this big research project has as scientific background many projects realized and collaboration. And I want to recognize, and I want to feel and show our acknowledgement to Professor Natalia UFIMTSEVA for realizing 4 scientific projects under their scientific direction, supervision, on the issue, on the study of specificity and peculiarity of the language consciousness of the people, the ethnic, living in the territory of Sakha Republic, Yakutia. Yakut, Sakha, Yukagir, the very, very small number of people, Evenki and Event, and the other different project realized by Leonora Grenoble and other colleagues in the University of the Arctic. Next slide. Irina? Yes, the main goal of this project on the ecology of the Arctic is to study and to analyze the language situation and the language functioning, the vitality of the languages of the people living in the Russian Arctic, such as Sakha people and Evenki, Tungusic people, Yukagir, Paleoasiatic, and Chukchi. They speak at minimum 3 or 4 languages: Russian, Sakha language, and 2 of languages of contact group, contactarian. The sociolinguistic task concerns the conducting of diachronic and synchronic analysis of the national linguistic and cultural policy of the Federal Center, the gender and the age and possibility in the school of the learning in the school of some languages of small number of people, and not only in the Arctic territory, in the settlement living by this group, but in big cities as Yakutsk, Nizhny, Nerengri, Pokrovsk, etc. The study of objective factor of the languages functioning in the Russian Arctic, in particular area of national culture, and the function of cultural concepts, the vitality of this concept, vitality in the vital cultural practices. Social linguistic assessment to attempt the value of orientation of the speaker, in particular to native languages, towards the languages of own culture, to assess the quality content of the activity of state program in national language policy and the policy of school learning, of languages learning in the school. And next slide. And next slide. And the preliminary result of our issue is that we have conducted some experiment, primarily the experiment, free association experiment conducted by Russian Institute of Linguistics of the Russian Academy of Science, namely Natalia UFIMTSEVA and Evgeny Tarasov. And the other experimental, the testing of the testing of the web order in the syntax of bilingual. And the bilingual testing shows that in Yakut, in Sakha language, it's possible to reveal the initiative stage of language shift, of loss of some syntax and syntactic and grammatical order, and so many interaction and conducted by the bilingualism, by the primarily used Russian language. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Any questions?
Could I ask a question?
Sure.
Danuta,
Yeah.
Danuta, nice
Hello.
to see you. Are you well? Are you well?
Dear,
Okay,
dear,
Michelle.
yeah, yes, I will ask my question. I'm very happy to see my good friend Liudmila here. We didn't meet for a long time now. My question is the following. In which language do you are you pursuing your study of bilingualism? It's really a very serious question, because I'm very interested in study of bilingualism, and I study bilingualism, for instance, French-Russian bilingualism, and I noticed that the language in which you ask the questions, the language in which the test is done, has a very strong influence on the responses. So
yes.
sometimes we choose for Russian French bilingualism to ask the questions in English, because usually our respondents know also English. But what is your solution? What is your idea?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Michelle. I speak about two experiments.
Yeah.
One experiment is the experiment of free association in Yakut, in Sakha people, in Sakha language. But I must complete and exact that all Sakha people and all young people are the bilingual.
I know.
Native
I know.
Russian, Russian native.
I remember a while back.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And but in this parameters of bilingualism, there are two scale dominant. The language of dominant language is Russian Yakut and Yakut Russian, but all are ethnically and identically, self-identically, all these students are the Sakha. They identify of Saka, but they perhaps speak very, very bad in Saka because the Russian language is the primary language of using, of functioning, of communication.
Yes, I understand, but anyway, when you ask a question in Russian, you will answer in Russian. When you ask a question in Saka language, you will answer in Saka language. But is it possible to test the really level of bilingualism in this case? The question influences the response.
Association is real, but for the other testing, for syntaxic testing, the word order in the proposal, in the phrase, well, we have to have conducted 2 experiments in Russian and in Yakut.
Okay. Okay, I see. Well, I think it's a very big problem to make some really good test of bilingualism. I am very interested in that, but I don't know how to do that to be absolutely objective.
Yes, yes.
Not to influence our respondent.
I speak about the preliminary result. I mentioned this article, this paper.
I remember.
Professor Debren.
Yes.
Debren.
Yeah.
There is a very good test, but for multilingual, but it's mainly done to test aphasic patients. This battery was produced by Michel Paradis from the University of Montreal. I don't know if this will help. This will help you.
I will have a look. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Professor Jacques, you wanted to say something?
Yes. I've lived 19 years in a city that is called Roubaix in the north of France, on the border of Belgium. 35% of the population was from Algeria, not Arab or Arabic, but speaking Kabyle, the other language. So they were minority in Algeria, and they have great problems in Algeria, and they were how can I say, bizarre for the French, because the French, Maghreban, Algerian, Arabs, and they spoke Arabic for religious reason, but among their community, they only spoke Kabyle. But we had a 3-tier situation. We have an old language, Picard, that is commonly used, a dialect, in Roubaix, even by young people, and definitely in big industry, the wool industry or the textile industry, the SNCF, the train company, the local workers of the train company speak some kind of a mixture of French Picard accent, and the accent and the intonation is quite different. And then you have the French people who speak standard French, if standard French exists, but yes, we're going to say there is standard French. And then you have the immigrants. The immigrants are speaking in Roubaix something like 15 different languages. And they are speaking those languages every day. Those languages are not taken into account in any school. There is one teacher of Arabic in Roubaix, where the population, the Algerian population, is Kabyle. In Roubaix, one teacher. And he teaches, he's agrégé, so he teaches 15 hours. You can imagine how many students are concerned. And what's more, with the cultural, completely hiatus, contradiction. And what do we do in such a situation? So I was interested with Siberia, Arctic region, where you have native, what you call them, another word, people are speaking the old local languages, and there must be a lot of those local languages, different types, different families, but there you are. Then you have the Russians who came, and there you have the Russian language, and then do you have immigration?
Not so much.
So you only have two tiers: the local, the native languages, and Russian. But it is interesting anyway to see how you do it, because in Western Europe at the present moment, we are not confronted to two. First, we are confronted in three tiers: the old local languages or dialects, or call them what you want, the official national languages, and then the immigration languages. And the immigration languages is 15, 20 in Europe, who knows how many. And you have Arabic, or languages of the family, of the Semitic family, Semitic, both Hebrew or Arabic, and variations. And then you have a lot of Kurdish. Kurdish is an Indo-European language. You have other Indo-European language from the Middle East. Iranian, Iran, the language is Indo-European. Then you have from India and Pakistan, Indo-Aryan languages. And of course, we still have Vietnamese, Chinese, and other population who speak quite different languages, and they are isolating languages. What do we do? And how do we deal with that constellation in schools? At the present moment, the French government, it's don't speak of it too much, at least.
Yes, there are big issues in France now.
And but what do we do? And that's what would be interesting, to confront other areas in this world where the problem is being lived for one, dealt with for two, and maybe elaborated into some kind of more than coexistence, but at least coexistence. Why not working together? And that's why I was listening the two languages trying to mix, the in-between hybridization. My experience is that it is at times very dangerous. It can brings up some kind of quid pro quo, contradictions, misunderstanding. It's not the shit and shit. It is the same kind of misunderstanding, but this time with a word of one language used by someone from another language, wrongly pronounced and misunderstood. If you are in bilingual or multilingual situation, you know what happens. When an Arab says something with a bad accent and a wrong meaning or wrong comprehension, if it is badly comprehended by the person who is receiving the message, you can get into a street fight. And for misunderstanding. So that's why I say mixing the languages, it might become very dangerous. Might. I've spoken too much.
Yes, I understand. Thank you very much. For the case of Yakutia, well, the Russian Arctic, it's not a France. It's not a France. It's a huge several climate. There are no so many migrants. The little migrant settlement maintain their languages and culture. By all the territory, we have one language for communication, for absolute communication is the Russian language. If the migrant want to work in Yakutia, in Russian, in the Russia, and in Yakutia, in the Arctic, they must pass the exam of Russian language. It's a serious exam of multi-scale, primary scale, and other competence, another level, and a few, they obtain this diploma of language competence.
I want only to stress that in Yakutia, the problem is really that it's very cold in Yakutia. It's a very hot climate, so there are really not so much migrants. But in other parts of Russia, in Siberia, in east western Siberia, in southern Siberia, there are many migrants. And we are by the time now we are studying the problems, the issues that France is concerned with the migrants, with the language of migrants, because we are, I mean, Novosibirsk State University and Tomsk State University, we are concerned by this study in France. We consider that the experience of French scientists, French researchers can help Russian government and Russian cities to solve some problems with their migrants, because the problems with problems of France, there are the future problems of Russia.
Perhaps. Thank you so much, Michelle. Bella, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I probably wanted just to comment probably Michelle's question, because we live in probably the same situation of bilingualism here in Adygea. And well, if you ask me, for example, what language should you use when you ask or questionnaire people, so you should just ask in the language you want to get the notion of the knowledge of the conscious, and for example, if you want to know what is the content of the conscience of French people, so use French, not English. So
yes, but I'm speaking of bilinguals.
But yes, bilingual.
My concern is bilingual.
Well, for example, several years ago, I did the same with Adig people who speak Adig language and who don't speak Adig language. Or, for example, they could speak Adig language a little bit, but they could not write, for example, it. So if they could speak but could not write, I helped them to come to fill in the form, right? But if, for example, they couldn't speak their own language, I asked them to fill in it in Russian. And I compared these two groups also to Russians who lived in Adygea and to those who live in Russia in general. Mm-hmm. So, and I can say that, you know, our consciousness or mind is quite flexible, because, for example, I can fill in two different forms in two different languages and answer them differently, because the language itself just probably advises us to say this or that. And well, the consciousness of Adiga people was quite different from other groups, of course. But those Adig people who didn't speak their native language, but probably knew some notions of Adig language, they answered more like Russian ones who lived together with Adig people.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yes.
Professor, thank you so much for your comment, Bella. Professor Marcus, you wanted to say something?
Microphone.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. This is such a great debate taking place in this room. Yes, I have been working on Amazonian indigenous languages for a decade or so, doing psycholinguistic experiments in a new field we call experimental field work. And these populations, they pose immense methodological and theoretical problems for the cognitive sciences as a whole. I'm just in the process of reviewing a paper I submitted to the Journal of Cultural Cognitive Sciences, and discussing what has been called, I don't know if you know this, acquainted with this framework, the weirdest people in the world. And these ideas are very interesting because actually 80% of research in the cognitive science is done with these people, I mean, white, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic society. 80% of articles in the main journals, they are done with these people. So, but these people account for only 12% of the world's population, only 12%. So most work that is being done may be very much unrepresentative of the human species, properties of cognition. And so this is very urgent. I think these ideas should be at example, no doubt about that. Next time we should have a really important meeting on people who are working with multilingualism, bilingualism, and non-weird populations, because this opens a new frontier for cognitive science in general, for psycholinguistics in particular. There are many people interested. How can we go ahead and study these populations? And it's not only methodological issues that are involved here, but all sorts of theoretical questions arise concerning things that we have thought were well established in science, but they were so restricted to a small, tiny fraction of the world, which cannot be reliable anymore. So congratulations, it's a beautiful discussion. Thank you.
So much. Thank you so much, Marcos. Professor Leonor, you wanted to say something? Professor Jacques?
Yes.
We have a kind of a line.
Yes, just a remark on what Marcus has just said. We will discuss it tonight in the General Assembly, but we should try to get in touch and get the collaboration of UNESCO and maybe UNICEF. UNESCO is in Paris, so that's easy for me to get there. And UNICEF mustn't be very far.
That's a great idea.
That would be interesting, because I know since I'm been
very good idea.
I'm working on the Southeast Asia and South of Asia and a little bit of China. I've seen them, how they are working in those areas, language, culture, economy, and so on. And they must have interesting experiences and even experiments and a lot of things to say. Maybe we should propose them a collaboration for the next Congress. We have 3 years. That's time enough for them to react, because they are slow, of course.
Just an addition on what you said, Jacques. I am in the committee because we are very much worried also on language extinction problem. You know, that languages are dying at a rate you cannot believe what it is. So I'm engaged in this movement. We have had an important conference here that was supported by the Brazilian Linguistic Association, Abralim, called Viva Língua Viva, Live Live Languages. And there's going to be another one, but the first installment, we united people from Polynesia, the Maori, who have an important experience. And just following up what Jacques proposed, we had a meeting just last week with UNESCO officials. So if you want to get acquainted with these things, since you're in Paris, I visited UNESCO in Paris some years ago, but now there's a very good opportunity for us to join, because UNESCO has declared the decade of the indigenous languages in the world is starting next year. So there was a hearing program, a hearing audiences last week. I took part in them, in which they are very welcome to new proposals. Proposals that can lead to programs in which languages can survive. They doomed to extinction, and I am quite sure they would be also willing to support programs which get evidence, that study, because public policies have been supported by evidence, cannot be supported by subjective ideas. Oh, I think this is the world is full of bad things like this, but we need to be based on evidence. So research should be done before any policies must be taken. So we have to know the populations, we have to know their languages, we have to know their processing properties, their acquisition properties. So I am sure this is a major challenge for us, scientists at ZAPO, also people who are worried about the preservation, the vitalization, the revitalization of these languages, which are really threatened nowadays. They are dying. They are becoming extinct at a very fast rate. In my own experience in the Amazon area for many, many years, I started working with indigenous language. I've seen the last speakers of at least 3 languages, which now are extinct. So I think actions like these benefit not only science, but also benefit directly these populations. We have been engaged, and this should be an aspect that we should consider as well, like Professor Leonor do, in terms of the protagonism of the teachers. This is time for protagonism of indigenous philosophers, of indigenous speakers, of indigenous linguists. I have been working a program to prepare indigenous peoples to think about their own language, to write their own grammars, and also to do research, even using eye tracking. I have a PhD student who defended last year, who is a native speaker of Kaingang language, who is an indigenous language in the south of Brazil, Marcia, and she did eye tracking, looking at the evidentials in the language because they have narrative, they have several uncommon evidentials. So there's much to be discovered. And if we just study the, the Western weird languages, maybe we're not studying really human cognition. So that's what I like to add to what Jacques said. But of course, yes, that's a great idea. Let's discuss it in the channel meeting. Thank you, Professor.
Thanks so much, Marcus, for a very interesting comment. Professor Leonor, you wanted to say something. Can you unmute your microphone, please? We can't hear you because your microphone is muted.
No, sorry.
We can hear you now.
No, I can't. I have nothing to say.
Okay, I saw the hand, your hand. You raised the hand, so that is
Sorry,
why.
I am so tired that sometimes I
do it automatically. Okay, no problem. So, ladies and gentlemen, so from what I can see, our final speaker can't join us for some technical reason, I think. She was here at the very beginning, but disappeared and can't get back, which means that we are just winding up. And I must say that we had a very, very interesting discussion, thanks to joining of the SAPL members. Thank you very much for joining our session. You really contributed a lot. Thank you so much. And we will meet tomorrow. Professor UFIMTSEVA, would you like to say something? Larisa is here, she can interpret. No? Or you will be winding up tomorrow? Что-нибудь скажете, Наталья Владимировна, или завтра обобщите все? So Professor UFIMTSEVA, yes, promised to make a kind of a concluding speech tomorrow at the end of the discussion. So thank you very much for such an interesting day, and enjoy the rest of the day, of the night, depending on the time zone. And see you tomorrow. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Goodbye, goodbye.
Thank you.
Not tomorrow, tonight. There's a general meeting.
Oh, yes.
Don't forget it. Don't try to escape it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for reminding us. Goodbye.
See you
Goodbye.
tomorrow. Goodbye.
Bye.